What if I told you that one of Memphis's biggest rap rivalries is about to get even more dangerous with new revelations that could change everything? For years, the streets of Memphis have been a battleground for some of the most intense beefs in hip-hop. At the center of it all, you've got Key Glock, Yo Gotti, and the legacy of Young Dolph. But it's not just about bars or hit songs anymore. What started as a simple music feud has spiraled into something much darker, with lives lost and alliances shattered. And now, Key Glock's name is being linked to a shocking new twist in the tragic death of Yo Gotti's brother, Big Jook. The streets are buzzing, and fresh footage has surfaced showing exactly how Glock might be involved. With evidence this clear, many are wondering, will an arrest be next? Let's dive deep into the rivalry, the murder, and what's at stake for these Memphis Titans as we explore a conflict that's far from over. Section 1. The history of tensions between Young Dolph and Yo Gotti. The beef between Young Dolph and Yo Gotti didn't start yesterday. It goes way back, rooted in pride, business, and loyalty. In 2014, when Young Dolph turned down an offer to sign with CMG, Yo Gotti's label, that's when the fuse was lit. It wasn't just a rejection, it was a declaration. Dolph was about to build his own empire, and he wasn't going to bow to anyone, not even Yo Gotti. What followed was a full-on war, played out through diss tracks and online taunts. The rap world watched as the two traded verbal blows, each track more pointed than the last. Dolph was relentless with his shots, and Gotti's camp wasn't backing down either. This wasn't just a rap feud, it was a battle for the throne of Memphis. But things went from music to real life in 2017. That's when the violence escalated, and the game stopped being about bars. During CIAA weekend in Charlotte, Young Dolph's bulletproof SUV was sprayed with over 100 rounds. Miraculously, Dolph walked away unscathed. The street chatter. Many believed it was retaliation for the ongoing war with Yo Gotti. The question on everyone's mind was, who was behind it? At this point, the feud wasn't just gossip, it was deadly serious, and it had the streets of Memphis on high alert. Even though both artists continued to rise in the industry, the tension was now a part of their legacies. The music was just the backdrop to the real battle, one that was beginning to blur the lines between business, personal vendettas, and street justice. Section 2. The tragic death of Young Dolph. By 2021, the rivalry between Young Dolph and Yo Gotti had reached its boiling point. Young Dolph wasn't just a rapper, he was a symbol of independence. His success came from building his own empire with Paper Route Empire, and that made him a target. When he was gunned down in broad daylight on November 17, 2021, the entire city of Memphis was left in shock. The man who had survived multiple attempts on his life now lay cold in the streets with 22 bullets lodged in his body. But it wasn't just Dolph's death that left a scar. It was the way the whole city reacted. Memphis was in mourning, but for Key Glock, the pain ran much deeper. Glock wasn't just an artist on Dolph's label. He was Dolph's protege, his brother. They had been through everything together. And now, with Dolph gone, Glock was left to pick up the pieces. In the months following Dolph's death, Key Glock dropped his tribute track, Proud, a powerful expression of grief and loyalty. In that moment, the Memphis streets knew one thing for sure. Key Glock wasn't just about the music. He was about family, and no matter what came next, he was going to carry Dolph's legacy with him. But Key Glock wasn't just grieving. He was also exposing something huge. In a now infamous Instagram live session, Glock dropped bombshells about Yo Gotti's alleged involvement in Dolph's murder. He didn't just hint at it, he straight up made it known that Big Jook, Yo Gotti's brother, might have had a hand in the whole thing. Glock's emotional breakdown went viral, sending shockwaves through the rap game. With this revelation, the beef between Glock and Gotti's camp wasn't just personal. It was political.
The stakes had been raised, and now the lines between street codes and the music industry were completely blurred.
Section 3. Big Jook's return to Memphis and the tragic end. Big Jook's return to Memphis in 2024 was never going to be a quiet affair. The streets of Memphis are unforgiving, especially for someone like Big Jook, who had a reputation tied to one of the most heated rivalries in hip-hop. Jook, Yo Gotti's older brother, had already become a central figure in the dangerous web of Memphis street politics. Despite warnings from those close to him, Jook decided to come back home. But Memphis had changed, and so had the stakes. His return wasn't a celebration, it was a countdown to the inevitable. The city was on edge, and tensions were high, especially in the aftermath of Dolph's murder. Big Jook's every move was being watched, and those who wanted to settle scores were ready to make their move. Surveillance footage captured a white Ford sedan, seemingly following Big Jook wherever he went, always watching, always waiting. The fact that Memphis police had discreetly installed cameras around him spoke volumes. Authorities knew there was danger in the air, but no one could predict how quickly it would escalate. Then, on a night that seemed like any other, tragedy struck. Big Jook, along with his crew, attended a funeral repast at a local venue. What should have been a somber occasion turned into something far worse. As Jook and his entourage left the venue, the white Ford sedan trailed behind, its occupants biding their time. Within seconds, gunshots erupted, filling the night with chaos. Big Jook fell victim to the violence that had defined his life, a tragic end that seemed almost inevitable, considering the dangerous environment he had chosen to return to. The city of Memphis went into shock, but for Key Glock, it wasn't just another loss. It was a personal blow. Glock had already lost his mentor in Dolph, and now he was being confronted with the death of another figure tied to the same ongoing conflict. The streets were talking, and many began speculating whether Glock had any involvement in Jook's death. Was he directly tied to it, or was he simply a bystander in a war that had taken too many lives? As the investigation unfolded, the Memphis Police Department worked tirelessly, piecing together evidence from the crime scene, including the surveillance footage. The white Ford sedan's involvement raised serious questions. As the investigation continued, the rumblings within the streets got louder, and the question that everyone was asking seemed simple: who was really behind this tragedy? Big Jook's death wasn't just another headline. It was a signal that the Memphis rap scene was far from done with its violence. For Key Glock, the stakes had never been higher. His reaction to the tragedy stirred even more controversy. Some called him cold and insensitive, but others saw his frustration as a reflection of the ongoing beef that had taken too many lives. But whatever people thought of Glock's response, one thing was clear: he wasn't backing down, not from his loyalty to Dolph, and not from the streets that were now part of his DNA.
Section 4. Key Glock and Big Jook's complex relationship. The relationship between Key Glock and Big Jook was always strained, not just because of the music, but because of the deep-rooted street politics that defined their world. Big Jook, Yo Gotti's older brother, was a key figure in CMG, while Glock was Young Dolph's protege and a pivotal part of Paper Route Empire, PRE. This division created a clear line between the two camps, and their relationship became a symbol of the ongoing war between CMG and PRE. They never openly confronted each other in public, but every time they crossed paths, whether it was at a funeral or elsewhere, the tension was palpable. One of the most notable encounters happened at a funeral, where the cold stares exchanged between Glock and Jook spoke volumes. It was clear that the beef between the two camps was alive and well, even in a setting where respect and mourning should have prevailed. After Big Jook's tragic death, the rumors about Glock's involvement began to swirl. While there was no solid evidence tying him directly to the incident, the streets started speculating, and the question on everyone's mind was whether Glock had played a role. His reaction to the tragedy only fueled the fire. Many felt his response was cold, lacking the expected empathy for a fallen enemy. But what people didn't realize was that Glock's reaction wasn't simply about disrespect. It was the culmination of a long-standing violent conflict between two families, two rap empires. Glock wasn't interested in following the narrative the streets or the media tried to push. He wasn't simply mourning the loss of a rival. He was navigating a complex and dangerous world that had already claimed too many lives. His frustrations came from more than just a personal rivalry. It was the result of years of battle. And in Glock's mind, this wasn't just about music anymore. It was about survival.
Section 5. Yo Gotti's involvement and silence. Throughout the unfolding drama in Memphis, one figure's silence spoke louder than any words. Yo Gotti. While the streets buzzed with accusations and the investigation into Young Dolph's death deepened, Gotti remained tight-lipped, a move that many saw as deliberate. This wasn't just about keeping a low profile, it was a strategic decision with deep implications. Yo Gotti's silence wasn't just a personal choice, it was a legal necessity. As the head of CMG, he was well aware that anything he said could be used against him in the ongoing investigations. Public statements can easily become evidence in criminal cases, especially when linked to something as serious as a murder investigation. The FBI and local authorities had already connected Big Jook, Gotti's brother, to the $100,000 bounty allegedly placed on Dolph's head. As the investigation unfolded, Yo Gotti's name was inevitably drawn into the spotlight, but with all the scrutiny on him, staying silent was his safest bet. This strategic silence wasn't lost on the streets. While Gotti wasn't speaking publicly, the buzz about his possible involvement grew louder. It was well known that Big Jook was a key player in CMG's operations, and many wondered how much Gotti really knew about the alleged plot against Dolph. The $100,000 hit wasn't just a street move, it was tied to serious money and power within the CMG camp. And with Gotti at the top, how far did the influence of his camp extend? Was he involved? Did he turn a blind eye, or was he simply staying quiet to protect himself and his brand? Despite all the speculation, Yo Gotti's silence remained unbroken. He understood the importance of his image in the rap game, and speaking out too soon could have potentially compromised his entire career. But the silence also created an air of suspicion. Something was clearly being hidden. The more Gotti stayed quiet, the more the streets and fans filled in the gaps with their own theories. Yo Gotti wasn't just a rapper at this point. He was the center of an investigation that could alter the course of Memphis rap history. His next move would have to be calculated as the pressure on him mounted. But for now, he was playing the long game, and in his world, silence was his most powerful weapon. Section 6. The deadly escalation of the Memphis beef. The situation in Memphis had reached a point where the lines between rap beef and street violence had blurred beyond recognition. What started as lyrical sparring between Young Dolph and Yo Gotti had evolved into something much more dangerous. The streets weren't just watching anymore. They were actively involved, and lives were being lost over a rivalry that had escalated far beyond the realm of music. In the wake of Young Dolph's death, Key Glock found himself caught in the crossfire of a deadly chess match. Despite his best efforts to stay focused on his career and maintain loyalty to Dolph, the streets had a way of pulling you in, whether you wanted to or not. Glock's name had been tied to the violence, and as more revelations came out, so did the growing number of enemies who had placed a target on his back. One of the most chilling developments was the revelation of the bounties placed on Key Glock's life. A leaked list revealed that Big Jook, before his own death, allegedly placed a $50,000 bounty on Glock's head. With Dolph's passing still fresh, it seemed like the entire PRE cab had a price on their heads. This wasn't some small-time street issue anymore. This was a war, and the stakes were terrifyingly high. The bounties were only the tip of the iceberg. Industry insiders revealed that Key Glock was being systematically blocked from major collaborations and features, with his name being blackballed from certain circles within the music industry. This wasn't just about avoiding a direct confrontation. This was about isolating Glock, cutting him off from the very opportunities he needed to elevate his career. The professional isolation was perhaps more damaging than any diss track or Instagram post could ever be. It showed that the music industry wasn't just a business, it was also a battleground for power, control, and survival. Through all this, Glock's response remained cool, calculated, and focused. In interviews, he made it clear that he was staying loyal to Paper Route Empire and the legacy of Young Dolph, but he wasn't going to allow the beef to define him. His music was his focus, his escape, and his weapon against the chaos surrounding him. When asked about collaborating with CMG artists, Glock's response was telling. He simply laughed it off. There was no need for words, no need for public jabs. His stance was clear. His loyalty to PRE was unwavering, and he wasn't about to be drawn into a war that had already cost too many lives. Despite the growing threats and constant danger, Glock remained a force in the Memphis rap scene. His albums, tracks, and live shows demonstrated that he wasn't going to be defined by the violence. While the streets may have been in chaos, Glock was focused on building his own future and maintaining the legacy of his fallen mentor. He knew that the streets could only take so much, and he was determined to push forward no matter what. As the Memphis rap scene continued to feel the ripple effects of Dolph's death and Big Jook's murder, the streets began to understand one harsh reality. This wasn't just about beefs anymore. It was about survival. The danger was real, and so was the impact. This was no longer a game. It was life and death. And in this high-stakes environment, Key Glock was one of the last men standing, determined to make it through the storm, no matter the cost.
Conclusion. The story of Young Dolph, Yo Gotti, Key Glock, and the streets of Memphis is one tangled in loyalty, ambition, and violence. What started as a rivalry between two of the city's biggest rap stars has spiraled into a much darker reality, claiming lives and destroying careers. From diss tracks to real gunplay, the Memphis beef has shown just how high the stakes are when street politics collide with the world of hip-hop. For Key Glock, this journey has been marked by deep personal losses. The murder of Young Dolph changed everything for him, leaving him not just grieving, but also at the center of a dangerous, ongoing conflict. His loyalty to Dolph and Paper Route Empire has kept him grounded, even as the threats against him escalate. With bounties on his head and constant industry blackballing, Glock's career has become just as much about survival as it has about music. As the investigation into Big Jook's death continues and more secrets are uncovered, one thing is clear. This feud is far from over. Yo Gotti's silence has only fueled more suspicion, and the streets of Memphis are still caught in a cycle of violence that doesn't seem to be slowing down. Glock, though, isn't backing down. Despite the weight of the streets on his shoulders, he's continued to make music and keep pushing forward, honoring his mentor's legacy in the process. In the end, the tragic deaths of both Young Dolph and Big Jook have left scars that may never heal. The Memphis rap scene, once full of unity and creativity, now feels like a war zone, where alliances are tested, friendships broken, and lives lost. But through it all, Key Glock remains determined. He's not just fighting for his place in the rap game, he's fighting to protect his legacy, his family, and his future. As this saga unfolds, the question remains, Will Memphis ever find peace? Or is this just the beginning of a deeper, more dangerous chapter in its rap history?